Hello, everybody. We'd like to welcome you to the session, Bringing the Lab to the Kids, Cultivating Solidarity Through Transnational Indigenous Practices. We're going to move through an agenda. Here's our agenda, basically some welcomes, a land acknowledgement, a little bit about how to talk to us and maintain some kind of connection and interaction. And then we're going to tell you a little bit about our project. I'm Dr. Karidat Souza, and I'm going to be moving us through with the slides. I'm going to hand it over right now to Marley Smith so that she can do the land acknowledgement for us.
Mahalo, Anaki. We as individuals who implemented this work take this time and space to acknowledge the Aina from which we each extend from, and to honor the Aina in which we present this work. We are individuals that extend from the sacred lands of Hawaii, Boriken, Ghana, and these lands that are the conditions of a neo-colonial world in America today. Recognizing that we are the living products of a violent, complex history that is colonization and resilience in the face of colonization. We recognize that by acknowledging the intersectionalities of our land's identities, we honor the peoples who extend from these spaces. We take space to honor these lands in which we sit by recognizing the original stewards of these lands who continue to fight and thrive in the face of forced removal, land displacement, and genocide. Acknowledging the tribal nations and communities that extend from the Arapaho, Cheyenne, Ute, Lakota, Sioux, and the many other indigenous nations unacknowledged by federal treaty. We take time to honor the many families and communities that have been impacted by the many treaties that have established our world today, such as, but not excluded to, the Medicine Lodge treaties, Treaty of Fort Wise, Treaty of Fort Laramie, and the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. As individuals that extend from these communities and make up the parts of our global community, we represent the living paradox of our lands and move through this work in a light that means to empower our peoples and bring prosperity to our Mother Earth. Mahalo.
Thank you so much, Marley. I appreciate your acknowledgement. I want to do some introductions, and I'm going to introduce myself, and then I'm going to hand it over to my two co-project leaders, and we'll talk a little bit about the project. So I'm Dr. Karidat Souza. I am the Director of Women and Gender Studies here at CSU, and I'm also a faculty member in the Department of Ethnic Studies. What you see on the screen are Adinkra symbols that come from Ghana. They are visual proverbs that are used to talk to our deceased, and also to ancestors. And we've each chosen one of those to represent us for this project. The one that I'm using is called Asase Ye Duru, which means the divinity of the earth, and it connects again this idea of I think the phrase that goes with it is the earth has weight, and it really is about the divinity of the earth. I'm going to let Samuel talk to you a little bit about Sankofa, the Sankofa symbol, which is the center symbol.
Thank you, Dr. Souza. I'm going to talk about Sankofa. Sankofa is just one among many symbols of my ancestors, and it mainly talks about going back, the wisdom of going back into the past to bring whatever you forgot into the future. So I have something little here to share with you on Sankofa. Sankofa, Sankofa, Sankofa woyenji, Sankofa, Sankofa. Saurefi na sawo sanko chikofa umo musu. Medamasi.
Thank you, Samuel. Marley? We don't hear you, Marley. Try again. Yep, unmute. Thank you.
I was on mute. So the symbol that I have chosen is called Aya, which signifies endurance and resilience. I embody this symbol because of the plant form that it takes, and I really connected with it on my journey over there in Ghana.
So I'm going to have Marley do a poetic libation for us. We thought that we would begin with story and, of course, end with story as part of, our heritage in terms of, indigenous practice. And so, Marley, would you like to?
Aloha kākou malama aina haumana. To introduce myself, I want to open this space with two olelo no eao that are a part of how I am guided in my actions to do this work. The first is aloha mai no aloha ku. O ka huhu ka mea e ola o ole aia. It is translated as when love is given, love should be returned. Anger is the thing that gives no life. The second one is hahai no kauoi I kaulula au. The rains follow the forest. I ask as our guests in this space that you sit with these words to it that extend from my peoples of Hawaii, embrace them, reflect, and truly see how this may apply in your life as we continue to share our story with this work today.
Before we start, I just want to give us a sense of some of the norms that we want to use for the chat. We have a Jamboard prompt, and we'd love to interact with you in different kinds of ways. Certainly, you can ask us some questions and make some comments verbally or through the chat. But we also have a Jamboard in case some of you want to go there and share some thoughts, some ideas, some questions that have come up. You can type into the Q&A, ask a question and a thought. We also thought if you wanted to share any resources or tools, please, you're welcome to do that. Send us some love, send each other some love through emojis and any kind of affirmation. We're going to try to keep track of the chat and the direct messages today, and we're going to summarize as best we can, through the chat and allow. So we're going to start with some opening statements. I'd like to begin by just talking a little bit about why this project. I started this project in Ghana 14 years ago, thinking about, in 2014, a UNICEF report that I read that really said and sort of indicated that by the middle of the 21st century, 2050, almost half of the children of the world would be born on the African continent. And as I was contemplating creating a program in West Africa, I thought about that as a mandate. I thought it was a responsibility and a mandate to begin to think about the children of the world and their future and how I might participate in helping or at least supporting young people in the world to discover what their future might look like. And so part of the Ghana program was a community engagement program with youth development. It meant, again, that I wanted to take people from here, young people from here, and have them and put them in dialogue with people in the global South, young people in the global South, in order to figure, to determine together what that future might look like, since of course I believe that the future is in the hands of our youth, and that they are, we have to best prepare them for how to do that work in terms of ensuring the viability of the planet and also the viability of peoples and cultures on the planet. And so that was the beginning of the project. I then met with, I know Samuel since I've been going to Ghana. I met him almost 14 years ago, nearly, as a young friend, that sort of I was in contact with. And I thought, since he's a scientist, we would, have a conversation about maybe, supporting me in this project. And of course he did. I also met Marley through the Ghana program. She was somebody who was interested in coming, and we had several conversations to think through, how she might attend. And since she's a Native Hawaiian who is also in, was in the Warner College of Conservation, I thought it would be great to maybe connect her with someone over there, specifically Samuel, so that they could think through a project together that would allow us all to learn something about what transnational solidarity might look like, what it might mean to talk to each other across national boundaries, across cultural boundaries, to figure out what this future, co-create a future with each other. So let me hand it over to Samuel so he can tell you a little bit about what this project means to him.
Thank you, Dr. Souza. As Dr. Souza said, our friendship goes back into somewhere 20 2009. And anytime she's in Ghana, I pay her a visit at the hotel where she resides. And I remember in 2019, that's on January 2019, I paid her a visit when she was in Kumasi at the hotel. And while we had a conversation, she disclosed to me that she had this plan of coming along with these foldable microscopes to be used to teach children science in her next trip. And she wanted me to be a part of that particular project. Dr. Souza's mention of the idea of coming with a microscope on her next trip to Ghana to be used to teach science to kids sounded more like, I would say, a dream unfolding into reality before my eye. In fact, I saw the lab coming to the kids, and indeed, in the coming, it did come to the kids in January of the following year. When I finished high school, I worked as a people teacher for the next 4 years. In the beginning, it was to earn a living. And then as time went on, it became a passion. I taught science, I taught mathematics, and also ICT. But in those days, the science that I taught was, I would describe that as an imaginative science. Imaginative in the sense that these kids there was no tools or any other thing to experiment or demonstrate to these kids what was being taught to them. So the best they could do was just look at images from textbooks, images and then diagrams, and then imagine what was being taught to them. So that's made teaching science quite difficult. Even though it was a passion, it was a bit difficult. The best, as I said, the best thing they could do was just looking at diagrams and imagining. So that's why I can describe that as imaginative science. A few years back, while I was in the lab, I had this little friend who is the son of a neighbor. He paid me a visit in the lab. I think I told him earlier on what I do for a living, what I work on. I told him I work in the hospital lab. I think he was quite interested in knowing how it looks like to work in a lab. So one day he came to the hospital with a mother. He wanted to see where I work. He wanted to see the lab. So I brought him to the lab, and at the sight of the microscope, he was so excited. He was so happy to see the microscope. So what I did was I prepared a suspension of red cells and then guided him to look at them under the microscope. And you can imagine how happy he was. The look in his face was beyond description. They were so, it was that of extreme joy. So from since then, I've had that wish that children his age be given the opportunity, that equal opportunity to also have a look at what we as scientists always see under the microscope each day in our line of duty. That way we may inculcate the love of whatever we do as scientists into these children. And in the near future, they can replace us as scientists. So this has always been my wish. Now, I remember somewhere last year in January, after the program, I brought out my Foldscope and demonstrated how this young boy, who was now about some years older, I demonstrated to him how he could look at microorganisms from pond water.
Sounds like Samuel is in from Ghana, and it sounds like his internet has been interrupted. So please bear with us for a minute. And if he doesn't come back, we're going to move on and go to Marley and have her talk a little bit, and we'll have him pick it up later. So our apologies, but technology is not the best generally. Go ahead, Marley. Why don't you move in and we'll have him pick up.
Okay, that's fine. So when I was presented with this opportunity, I was enthusiastic about bringing the world of natural resource management into the hands of youth that will one day take on the responsibilities we will leave with them. It was truly inspiring to be handed a basic tool made of recycled materials. It is less than $1 to make and was created through the collaborative vision of an indigenous scientist from India, Manu Prakash, and his Stanford University colleague, Jim Cebulski, to make science accessible to all and to continue building the global community of the microcosmos. This was an opportunity to begin supporting future practitioners and understanding the necessary holistic approach of utilizing natural science study with land management implementation in order to best adapt to our world's ever-changing conditions. And through this, when I was introduced to my colleague into my kaikua ana, or my older brother, Samuel, I found myself investing in a future beyond the limits of my own existence. And yet, I knew that it was my kuleana, my responsibility to provide access to resources that would unlock a perspective that our keiki, or our children, already hold within them through those that have come before them and have been the root of their existence. And with this mana, this power, we were just the guides for them in this self-discovery. When I finally placed my feet upon that sacred aina, or lands of Ghana, I experienced the true power of this work and how Aloha transcends beyond our societies. With each day that we worked with our keiki, they shared an entire world of perspectives and insights that we who are so privileged never consider or conceive. We guided them on their journey to understand the real problems of that their communities face, only to witness the true grounding they have in the realities of their own world. We saw them pull from their traditional knowledge foundations, become inspired by their community's visions, and implement true social justice in a way that most of us are only able to discuss and share in theory and in a classroom. For me, this project was the embodiment of being the bridge which crosses those arbitrary boundaries set to divide societies, rather than unite this world as a global community. As a Kanaka, it is important to travel and bring back that mana'o, those thoughts, and ike, that knowledge, to our community in order to help the people in Aina prosper. We are a community of Aloha, and therefore I invested in that ideal by always doing my part to Malama Aina. Part of that Malama Aina is representing and acknowledging that as a child who comes from and extends from an indigenous lineage of Hawaii, and also in that same breath extends from land displacement to a rural community, the Aina of Colorado, I found it was my kuleana to always give to our children in this world. This project allowed me that opportunity to fulfill this beyond the Mauna, the mountains, and the Kai, the sea, that I have come to know as my own, and take what I have to offer to the keiki that are my own by virtue of this world that connects us all.
Thank you, Marley. So one of the things that that Samuel indicated when he was talking was this question of the imaginative aspect of science in the global South, and that Manu Prakash developed the Foldscopes as a way to, to address some of the troubling aspects of what it means to be a scientist in the global South. And so these Foldscopes are paper microscopes, right, that allow people to take those microscopes into the field anywhere. And one of the things that I did in terms of conceptualizing this project was to talk to Marley and talk to Samuel. I put them together and I allowed them to have a conversation before we, the summer, before the project was launched, in order for them to build a relationship, since relationships are fundamental, right, to indigenous practices and storytelling. And so I asked them to tell stories, with each other, to share stories. to tell stories, and then to also build that relationship so that we could then move forward with the project. The project itself was based in Nima, Accra, which is a migrant community of predominantly Muslim peoples, but not completely, but predominantly Muslim people. We spent 4 days with the children. We worked with an organization that's a Ghanaian-led youth organization called Spread Out Initiative, where we did some work with the kids there. So you're going to see a lot of the different children right in the photos. And the photos tell a story about our lab. Our lab was in a school, it was a building, right? But it was pretty much, sort of bare boned, and we had mats on the floor, and for the most part, and we had tables, and then we set up our lab, right? In that school structure. It was a sort of number of classrooms. The kids went out into the community. They pulled plants and other items to look at under the microscopes, and they sat with different CSU students who were again trained to talk to the students. Marley and Samuel were leading the project, and so they helped think it through. The theme of the trip is not transnational solidarity, right? We want to be thinking, that is, as I thought about the trip and I thought about working in Ghana generally, I wanted to do it in a decolonial kind of way. I wanted to, look at and understand the way that Westerners enter societies in the global South, and to do it with respect and with an ethics that had to do with understanding that we were there to accompany people. So transnational solidarity, right? The notion of transnationalism is this idea of moving across national boundaries. Solidarity is the idea of unity among people based on developing similar strategies, similar dreams, and similar conversations about what how to live together. Transnational solidarity is about thinking through across national boundaries how people can come together and exchange with each other. The notion of accompaniment is central to transnational solidarity, and it's a way to think about how, instead of going to help, quote unquote help, instead of going to quote unquote uplift, instead of going to quote unquote change myself or change the world, we are really there to learn from Ghanaians about Ghana. Right. And we're there to accompany Ghanaians on their walk through their society, and perhaps exchange affection, exchange in relationship, exchange cultural understandings, exchange ideas and values and thoughts, and share with each other. So we were not there for anything other than to accompany Ghanaians, and in the process, hopefully learn something important about how young people live in other parts of the world. I'm going to hand it back. So Marley, if Samuel's not there, I'm going to ask you to read his thoughts about using the Foldscopes.
Samuel is back. If he wants to get off mute.
Yeah.
Samuel.
So, can you forgive me for the mix-up? I was talking about earlier on about this young boy who was a friend of mine. I showed him and my little wife, that's the wife of my, the sister of my wife's, how to use the Foldscope, and they were so excited. Yeah. So being presented with this opportunity to guide these little ones to observe elements from their communities at the microscopic scale, using the Foldscope did put me on a path towards realizing my long-haired dream of giving equal opportunity to kids around here in our part of the world. Thank you.
This slide shows you what the Foldscope looks like unassembled. The previous photos showed you what they looked like assembled. To the right is again the sort of the paper that the Foldscope comes in. Top left is the teacher's kit, and the bottom left is all of the implements that are set out for the Foldscope, so that you have the actual microscope, you have some slides, you have some lenses, you have some tweezers, etc. Different things that allow you then to set up the slides as well as the Foldscope itself. So go ahead, Samuel.
this was one main aspect of the program, the project. Even though I came into the project with the mindset of inculcating the love for science into these children, other aspects of the program also were very important. That was, we were tasked to make sure whatever we are going to work on was something that was going to be socially engaging, relevant, and something that supports the community that the children would come from. So we thought of what one problem or what one problem face all these children coming from this community. And we know that in Ghana, one particular problem that everyone faces is mosquito. That's the problem with malaria. Every household, there's no household in Ghana that can boast of not having been affected by malaria once in their life. So we came up with the idea of helping these kids understand that they can take this problem into their own hands and solve it in their own way. So in the beginning, we started with making them understand the life cycle of the mosquito, which is the vector of malaria parasites. Now, for them to understand how they will be able to control these parasites, this insect, that brings so much pain to their families themselves, they should be able to understand how the life cycle of this particular parasite. So we took them through this life cycle of the mosquito. It lays its egg on the surface of the water, and then it hatches into larva. The larva molts several times to kind of pupa, and then into an adult mosquito. The mosquito waits, they add new mosquito waits on the water surface and meet with a male, and then go back to lay eggs. Now, before they can lay the eggs, or they are able to lay eggs which can hatch into the larva, the pupa, and so on, they will need some blood, which contain the protein that they need to be able to make their eggs. Now, in doing that, they bite people. And some people have this malaria parasite in their blood, so they pick up the malaria parasite and transmit it to other people. Now, this leads to the disease, the malaria, that's the disease called malaria here, where the blood cells are destroyed, and then they begin to bring about the symptoms of malaria. So we told the children that to be able to avoid malaria, one, you have to avoid making them comfortable around us. How do we make them comfortable around us? By providing breeding grounds. Yes, anything that can collect water in and around the house is a breeding ground for the malaria mosquito. So the children got to know that by avoiding these breeding grounds, they will be able to prevent mosquitoes, and in doing that, they'll be able to prevent malaria. Next slide. Yeah. Now, there are so many ways that malaria can be prevented. One of the most widely used methods of mosquito control is insecticide usage. But we all know that insecticides are chemicals that can have harmful effects on we humans. And apart from having effects on the humans, other insects which are also equally important, like the bees and other pollinators, come in the crossfire. Yeah, our fight with mosquitoes bring these important insects in between, and we end up killing the mosquitoes, and at the same time these insects like the bee. And the bees are very important in the ecosystem because they help to pollinate flowers, which in turn gives us most of the food that we need to survive. So this way of controlling malaria, mosquito or malaria, to us isn't the best. But the indigenous way of controlling malaria, where you don't have to use insecticides or any other chemical, just by breaking the life cycle, avoiding anything that collects water around your home. So this is what we taught the kids. And this is what any kid can do. Make sure anything that collects water is covered, or if there's any water in there, you pour it away. There'll be no breeding ground for mosquitoes, and there'll be no malaria. Next slide. So we took them through this methods of malaria control or mosquito control. Anything collecting water should be avoided by breaking the life cycle of the mosquito. Now, this method is environmentally friendly, no health hazard. Yeah, because insecticides are chemicals, and anything that can kill another life form is potentially harmful to humans. So insecticide should be out of the way. Indigenous methods of controlling malaria was recommended to the children, and they were able to understand it and assimilate it. And they were so happy that we are able to teach them this. And they were encouraged to spread the news to their friends, because if I do it and the friend next door doesn't do it, the mosquitoes will come to my house. So these kids were excited to know this. And they took this to their friends. Yeah, initially coming into this program, into this project, I came with a mindset of inculcating the love for the sciences, particularly my field of it, that's the medical biological sciences. But then in April of 2019, when Dr. Souza
Marley, you want to pick it up?
Yeah, I can pick it up. So I think this is the part of the story that Simon was trying to get. When we connected, I very much wanted to take the ideas that he had in this idea of social justice and identifying this issue of malaria and expanding that into my profession, which is that natural resource context. For me, this project represented me taking these teachings from my own community and implementing these practices into the knowledge foundations of our youth, and watching the Keiki take this and expand upon these teachings. By guiding the individuals that will one day be our future in the ways of natural resource management that reflects the real world issues we are all actively a part of, we reinstill our natural and intimate connections to the Aina, Ea, air, and Vai, the water, that gives to us unconditionally. And that was the message we wanted to get across to these kids, that yes, malaria is this piece, and then you can expand upon that. You can grow, and your indigenous roots have that connection. By rerouting ourselves to our Mother Earth, we recognize our kuleana, our responsibility as communities and individuals extending as natural elements, representing as natural elements and representing pieces of the diverse ecosystems which define us rather than the thing we should dominate. When space, time, and energy is shared equitably and holistically between our indigenous peoples, an exchange of aloha occurs that is profound, and it transcends beyond anything that can be explained, which is what I experienced not only with the relationship I have with my kaikuana, but also with these children. As shared between the three of us, we made this vision a reality and taught the keiki that shared space with us the importance of doing this work in the mentality that is an exchange of aloha, and that is key. All of the things we did was an exchange, and it was sharing aloha not only for one another, but also for the aina that we were coming from, we were extending from, and we were on and sharing that space with. And in this way and through this direction, we were able to move beyond these restrictions and the ignorance that comes with privilege and with dominance and colonization. We were actively participating in indigenous exchange, whether you have those roots or not. And you enter this work with a pono or morally grounded foundation, based in genuine care to serve your community with no expectation in return. You meet the people where they are at as they share these needs. And this opens channels and routes of conversation that build genuine, honest trust in one another to reach a common goal set. And this leads to the acknowledgement of the past to give space for the present conditions that we live in and move forward into a brighter future for all. And with this mentality, it holds you as an individual accountable to the impact you will have on the aina and the peoples that extend from that aina, while also allowing for that aloha to be given and freely received. And for our youth, this opens a space and time for them to truly grow within themselves in a way that is holistic and open to the endless possibilities that are at their disposal, as they and all keiki on this world deserve. As this work breaks down the restrictions that are defined by these arbitrary boundaries we create and the social norms that dictate how we interact with one another, a greater understanding of our global and natural world becomes a common language that grounds on the space with the idea that we are connected, intertwined, and reliant on the aina, the vai, and the ea alike that always gives to us unconditionally. And so that is where my piece came in. That is how I gave to these keiki. And so now we look to the future and we look and keep in mind the power that these children hold. And so I want to open this idea of a vision with another olelo no ea. Hele poina ole kekeiki. A child is a lei never forgotten. And lei is one of the most sacred elements from my indigenous community. As stated by each individual who shared space and implemented this project and is now presenting that to you today, these children of Ghana are a part of the generations that will carry on the kuleana left by our kupuna and what we leave them today. Regardless of how the intersectionalities of an individual's identity is expressed, understood, and recognized, all keiki are a gift in this world and deserve all the aloha in this life. It is our kuleana as the individuals that define this era and time to invest in the futures of tomorrow, for we are all extensions of our natural worlds that feed into one another. And if we truly respect and honor our natural world, then we as beings that extend from this follow its example by preparing the future with the past and present resources to guarantee continued growth and prosperity for future generations. So I want to close with some words that were extended to me from my own familial lineage, my mother, who's in the photo that you see. She gave me clarity when I sat in a space of contradiction and I had to sit within my own paradox when preparing for this trip. When I was writing up reports and developing this program, I had this fear of having this extreme impact on these children that was going to be profound, and I didn't want to have an impact that was going to take away from them. I'm impacting them regardless, and I was trying to hold myself accountable, and it got to a point where I was scared to go. I didn't want to travel in a way that was going to impact these children negatively, because I know what that's like coming from this community, coming from an indigenous community, and having outsiders come in and think they know what's best for us. So she calmed me down, and these are her words to me, and I'm quoting this. She said, "Pua, you are no Westerner, and therefore you do not travel as one. You are just completing your extension of the lei that is life, and you are passing it on to the generations that follow by doing this work. And like a lei, we come to this earth, we breathe, we eat, and we live in the life building upon that lei that was given to us by our kapuna, our elders. And once our time is done here, we return to the waters and the soils of this world, completing our lei that is life. And then we give that to the keiki that follow. And that is how we are all connected in this world." So those were my words of wisdom from her. And I'm not sure if Samuel, oh, there he is. Okay, I'll pass this on to my kaikua ana.
Samuel, we're on the future. Unmute. Go ahead. Can you speak?
Yeah.
Are you there?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, go ahead. Wrap it up for us in terms of the future.
So the future of the future of humanity, to me, solely depends on the children of today. And as Dr. Souza said earlier in his opening statement, according to the UNICEF reports on Generation 2030 Child Demographic in Africa report, about half of the world's children will reside on the African continent by the end of the century. However, these are the very children who are most afflicted with extremes of poverty, famine, diseases, most of which are directly or indirectly linked to our actions and inactions as their stewards. To me, the way forward for the survival of humanity undoubtedly hinges on science, teaching them science practices that are relevant, socially engaging, and ecologically friendly. To these children should be our focus. Science that embodies social justice and fosters unity, as that demonstrated in this particular project, should be what we should be teaching to these children. Now, memories of things we teach or say to children today stay with them forever. So we should teach them something that will make our world a safe and a better place, not just for human race, but for all life forms that inhabit it. Now, I call this vaccinating the children. Now, vaccinating little ones against bad practices today guarantees us the hope of a better future. Thank you.
We want to leave we have a few minutes for questions. If you would like to put something in the Q&A or the chat, We also want to leave you with some words from the great Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who was the first president of Ghana, that the forces that unite us are intrinsic and greater than the superimposed influences that keep us apart. We want to thank you for coming to this session. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat or in the Q&A. You also have the Jamboard, so you can look at the Jamboard and possibly put some comments or questions up in there and to share with us. Thank you very much, and we hope you have a good rest of the symposium. I think we're done, right?
Yes, thank you very much to our panelists. What an interesting session. I think I learned a lot, and we had great attendance for this one. So thank you again for your words and for sharing your project more with us. We'll be moving on now to our next session, but once this session closes out, you'll get a link to a survey. So we'd appreciate your feedback if you wouldn't mind doing that, please. And our next session, which is starting at 1 p.m., is called Human Adaptation to Environmental Change, Then and Now. So thanks again, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you all in person for a future international symposium.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.